So first of all, thanks everyone for joining me on this online comics workshop, and thanks to The Believer for hosting me. So the topic for today is languages, which is a very broad topic. And we are going to focus on the different languages on our life and make three very short but hopefully interesting comics about that topic. And so to start, I want everyone to just think about what are the main languages in your life. So for me, I have three. My main language is English. It's what I'm fluent in. It's what I grew up speaking. And then after that, my second language would be Tagalog, the language from the Philippines. It's where my family is from, and it was spoken in our house growing up, and I can understand it perfectly, but when I try to speak it or I try to read it or write it, I'm pretty terrible at it. So I have a pretty interesting relationship with it. And then lastly, for my third language, it's French because I moved to France 2 years ago. And so I'm still in the process of learning French. And learning a language as an adult is really hard. So I commend anyone who's learning multiple languages at a later age. So during this workshop, we are going to focus on the languages in your life. And I have a couple of examples of some of the comics that I've made so far about the languages. And I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Okay, so this first comic is a comic I made for The Believer, and it's about my grandmother who spoke Tagalog in our house frequently, and it was just really fun to focus on some of the phrases that she was always saying around the house. And if you spoke a specific language, primarily in your childhood, you'll probably feel like a really strong connection to these phrases that you heard all the time as a kid. And we're going to touch on that later in one of our comics. And another comic I made pretty recently for the website Catapult, it's about living in France, and it's specifically about being a nanny here in France. And here in Paris, there's a lot of Filipino women who are nannies, and they spoke a really interesting mix of English, Tagalog, and French. Something I really liked about making this comic is being able to use all three of the languages in my life, specifically in this one panel. And that's another thing that we're going to explore in the third comic that we're going to make today. And lastly, this is just like a fun comic I made for Instagram because, like I mentioned, I'm in the process of learning French, and these are some of the weird phrases and French words that I've just stumbled upon since learning French. And a lot of the comics that we're going to work on are based just like on the strange observations we make about the languages that are in our lives, and kind of just mining that for good comic material. Okay, so hopefully by now you've kind of focused on which languages you want to draw about on this workshop. And it's going to be a pretty simple comics workshop. All you need is some paper and something to draw with. And the format is that we're going to be going over three pretty simple comics. I'll explain each one before we start. And then we'll have about 10 minutes of drawing time, and then we'll share. We'll do some sharing. And 10 minutes doesn't seem like a lot to make a comic. These are very simple comics, and if you need more time, you can consider these 10 minutes as sort of like a drafting period or a storyboard period. And I'd love to see all of you guys' final works, so be sure to tag me on Instagram, Kate Gavino and The Believer, so that we'll be able to share them. And I'd love to be able to see them. So we'll start with our first comic, and it's based on the ideas of language personalities. If you speak more than one language, you might have noticed that when you speak the language you're most fluent in, you feel really comfortable and at ease, and you feel like yourself basically. And then if you switch over to another language, that might change based on how skilled you are at speaking it, or if the language itself kind of makes you funnier or more confident, or less funny or less confident. You kind of start to notice that in every language you speak in, you kind of have a different personality. So for this comic, I wanted to focus on that idea. And again, the format's pretty simple. You start off with these squares that basically are going to be each feature a self-portrait of yourself. And in each self-portrait, you're going to draw yourself speaking speaking one language. And for my example, I drew 3 portraits of me trying to order a cup of coffee in each language. And as you can see in English, I'm just normal and comfortable enough to ask questions. And in French, I'm super formal and kind of nervous about using the right verb tense. And then in Tagalog, I kind of turn into my 80-year-old grandma when I speak. She basically taught me Tagalog, so I basically mimic her when I speak it. So I want you to think about like what kind of persona you take on in different languages, and kind of choose a situation for all 3 languages to kind of illustrate that, whether it's ordering a cup of coffee or talking to a friend, or maybe having a phone call with your mom. And then illustrate those 3 different situations. And I'll be drawing along with you guys, um, and we'll have about 10 minutes now to start, and then we'll start sharing some of you guys' comics, and I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. So we'll start drawing for a few minutes now. Mm-hmm. So about maybe 5 or 6 more minutes. Okay, so in a couple of minutes, we'll start sharing some of your work. So if you want to share some of your work with the rest of the workshop, so what you have to do is raise your hand, and if you get chosen, someone from the Believer will choose you, and what you have to do in advance is turn on your video so that we can see you, just in case. Um, so if you want to share, do the raise hand function and someone from the Believer will choose you. Okay, looks like we selected someone. Orlando?
Yes, hi there. Nice to meet everyone. It's first time here, so don't know what the process is. Should I quick intro or do my name or?
Yeah, you can tell us your name, what languages you chose, and share your comic.
Yeah.
Hey, could you close down your screen share so we can see Orlando?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Thanks.
Oh, this is digital? I did this all on paper.
Oh no, yeah, I did mine on paper. I did mine on paper
Okay,
too.
thank goodness. Okay, I got really scared there. I was like, I was not prepared. Yeah, so hi everybody, my name is Orlando Pimento. So my three languages are obviously English, Spanish, because I'm Mexican American and I grew up speaking Spanish. Not really my official language, like an official language I have mastered, but Italian. So I think hopefully you can adjust there.
Yeah, I can see it.
You can kind of see English starts on the, how does it look on your screen?
On the left side for me.
On the left side, Spanish in the middle, and then Italian in on the other, at the end.
Oh, cool. So so do you use lots of hand gestures when you speak English?
Yes, I'm a very energetic and dynamic person, so I just figured like whenever I just talk in general or really anything I do, there's a lot of hand movements.
Mm-hmm.
When I speak Spanish though, it's something like I said, I grew up in the household learning from my parents, but it was definitely not my parents were very strict, like they really only used it to, like in a very like formal or stern kind of way. Mostly my father. Anytime like he'd yell at me or like, lecture me, it was always in Spanish. So it was never really enough. I don't think I learned how to use Spanish in a fun way. So now every time I talk Spanish, I just feel like my body gets tense. Italian. So a couple years ago, I went to Italy for my first time, and I tried learning a bit of it, but it was honestly my first time not knowing what I was saying or what I was doing. So really just that whole phase, like anytime I spoke Italian during my trip, it was just a look of confusion. I was there for a week, so my face was like that the entire week.
Yeah, I think that illustrates it really well. Yeah, that's how I feel speaking French too. Yeah, thanks again for sharing. And I think, Karen, it's your turn.
Hi, my daughter picked me, but okay, this is mine. Wait, oh my God, okay, can you see it?
Yeah.
And then how am I gonna read it, man? All right, can I take it? It said, me in English. Hi, I'm Karen, the social worker. I'm not sure what I'm doing here in this bilingual class. All I know is that I want to be a cartoonist. I went really fast, so I'm embarrassed. Okay, and then
No,
Spanish is, I speak a little Spanish. Hola, soy Karen. Yo soy la trabajadora social. No sé mucho español, pero me encanta hablar español. And here's the thing. I drew quickly. You see, kids have question marks because my Spanish, when I speak to adults, they kind of understand me, but kids are always like, what are you saying? They never understand me. So that's what I drew. And that's what I drew. And then my daughter, you want to go? No, okay, so she did one also, but that's what I did. So
and I think you should be proud of your Spanish. Okay, so next up is Brina. I think you're muted. I can't hear you.
Oh, there we go. Hi, I'm really excited about this workshop.
Thank you.
Let's see, I did my first portrait here as an English speaker, ordering some beer. I definitely feel confident. That's why I drew the sunglasses. I'm half Salvadoran, so I speak some Salvi Spanish because most of my friends happen to be Salvi, so their accents kind of rubbed on me. So whenever I do speak with a Salvi accent and I hear somebody else with an accent, I kind of just like, I feel so seen right now. And I'm also half Guatemalan, and I feel like I have to kind of become a different type of person when I try to when I'm speaking in front of my Guatemalan family, like my voice is a little softer and I'm a little bit more shy and I guess a little bit more polite and inhibited.
Yeah, it's interesting how you kind of change personalities based on the language you're speaking. But no, I like that a lot. I especially like the sunglasses. Okay, next up it's Michael.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I drew this on my iPad. Let's see. So English is my main language. So that's me with a keyboard in front of me. And I was typing President Trump deliberately uses racist language, which is part of something I was just writing. But when I was a kid, I spoke only Cantonese until I started going to kindergarten. So I had to quickly think of something I could say in Cantonese, which was simply "no jung yi sek fan," which is just I like to eat rice, which is another way to say I like to eat. And that's me as a kid with a bowl of something steaming and trying to hold some chopsticks. And then I also speak a little bit of high school French, and so that's me in between in age in between the first two, basically. And I was trying to figure out how to draw the Eiffel Tower in the background, but I couldn't quite figure it out. So and there I'm saying je voudrais travailler à Paris.
I don't know. Yeah, I like the detail of the French striped shirt as
Of course,
well.
of course.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you again for sharing. All right, so I think that's, we're gonna move on to the next comic now. So let me share my screen again. Okay. Okay, so for the next comic, we are going to focus on just a specific phrase or word in one of the languages that you've chosen. So I chose the phrase in Tagalog, bahala ka. It's a phrase that my grandma always used to say in the house. And if you put it through Google Translate, it basically says, it means it's up to you. And to me, that definition just like doesn't encompass like all the shade that goes into this phrase when you hear it. And I've noticed that like as you speak multiple languages, you come across these phrases or words that have so many meanings and so many different kind of nuances to it, and it's pretty difficult to translate it into English or another language. So for this next comic, I want you to choose a word or a phrase in a language that just like really makes you laugh or makes you think, and it basically contains multitudes of different definitions and meanings. And I want you you can literally just share all the different definitions or meanings of that phrase or word, and you can like show like maybe you can draw maybe like the first person you ever heard use that word, or someone in your family or one of your friends who often uses that phrase or word as well. And this comic basically just shares like all the different meanings of this phrase or word, and all the different kind of ways you can use it. For example, for the phrase that I chose, bahalaka, for me, it's just kind of like the ultimate way to end a conversation. And yeah, it's just one of my favorite phrases. So I want you to think about a kind of a similar phrase that you use a lot, and it's not as easy to translate into English possibly. Or if it is an English phrase, maybe like in English is, and you can explain why that phrase in particular is interesting to you. So again, we'll have like a couple minutes to do this one. Have a lot of fun with it, and even if you want to take some time to do some quick internet research on the phrase or word that you chose, you can do that too. So we'll start drawing now for a couple more minutes. Okay, so we have about 5 more minutes and then we'll start sharing. Okay, so like before, if you want to share your work, you can raise your hand and someone from the Believer will choose you. And in the meantime, I'll share, let me cancel screen share. In the meantime, I'll share a quick drawing I did of a French phrase that I recently learned since I started working in a French office. It's an abbreviation, MDR, and it's short for mort de rire, or dying from laughing, which is basically their version of LOL here. And it's something that I just didn't know because I didn't grow up using the internet in French. And so learning internet slang in French has been really interesting for me. And that's one of my favorite ones that I've learned so far. Okay, so if anyone wants to share, someone from the Believer will choose you. Okay, Jamie? I think you're muted.
Hi, I'm Jaime.
Hi.
So I drew it on my iPad, and oh, I don't know if you can see. Maybe let me lower my brightness. Sorry. I'm Colombian, and this was a phrase that, let me see if you guys can see it now. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
can see it.
so it's of a fly, and the phrase is mosca. It literally means fly, but my mom would use it if we were in an area where maybe she thought like we were in a dangerous area, or I was about to do something that would put me in danger. She'd be like mosca, which would be like watch out, be alert. It kind of has like that double meaning.
Oh, that's cool. I'm gonna start using that. Okay, Raquel?
Hi. Yeah, so I am Brazilian, and there's a phrase, I'll show, a phrase called já vai tarde, which is usually translated as good riddance, which to me feels like a very British translation. But the words themselves, like já means now or already, vai means go or it goes, and tarde means late or a delay or to linger, and so it's more accurately transliterated as like it's past time for you to go, which I kind of love.
That's a good phrase to use.
Yeah.
That would come in handy. Okay. Tanli?
Oh, wow. So mine is nu, which is a Yiddish phrase that means basically anything you want it to mean. My grandmother, it looks backwards to me. Is it forwards to you guys?
No, it's forward, yeah.
Okay, it says, so it's like you go, no, and it could mean so, well, what did you expect to happen? How are you surprised by that? And what else is new? And lots of other phrases, like many Yiddish words, it can be used based on the tone more than the actual word itself.
Yeah.
My grandmother was Israeli, so she was
very prone to cynicism and to use this phrase a lot. So,
I love that she's holding a knife too.
well, she was always holding a knife, ostensibly for the kitchen.
Thank you. Okay, Pablo?
Yes, hi. Sorry, I didn't expect to get picked so quickly. So I have here the express. I think it's kind of dated. It's an old Chilean expression in Spanish, which goes "Se me apagó el televisor," which essentially means my TV shut itself off, which implies when you pass out or you lose consciousness. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you can see properly here, but I drew an old television. You know those old like 50s televisions, when you turned them off, you would see the light just like suck itself in. Yeah. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to represent with this.
I like that phrase a lot. It's very descriptive, I feel.
Yeah, it can be. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
My pleasure.
Next is Otz.
Mabuhay. Got another Filipino here. So the word I chose is tampo, and idiomatic phrase that I could think of in English is cutting your nose off to spite your face. Like when I was young and I didn't get what I wanted, like food or something, prepared a particular way, my mom would say, well, do you still want it? And even though I was still hungry, I would say no, because I was tampo. You could be kind of sulking, or another like internet way of saying it is, are you mad? And so that's my sister drawn very unflatteringly, and she's got pinchy fingers because she would always tease me and then try to make me cry and then ask me if I was tampo.
I like that. It reminds me of samangot a little bit, if you know that. Yeah. Yeah, cool. Thanks for sharing. Okay, if there's anyone else who wants to share, we can probably do maybe like two more. Okay, Anne Marie. I think you're still muted.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you. This is Anne-Marie and Tony. We're in New Zealand.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, so it's tomorrow and it's a beautiful sunny day here in tomorrow. I speak French at home, but I'm English speaker first language. And there's a word that was really hard for me to learn, 40 years ago when I was learning French. I can't go fully with this because it's actually an insult, but the word gueule, which actually means snout, is the word that I wanted to put up, because when you insult somebody, you can use the possessive pronoun in front of gueule, and that would be a very big insult. And I know there's some children here, so we can't say that. But you could also talk about someone's gueule, their snout, and you really mean their face. But actually, the word is about the snout of an animal. And so I've drawn, and I'm a new drawer. I learned to draw during lockdown. Learn is a big word. But anyway, I was just showing some snouts and avoiding offense. But it's a great word. And I don't know if it's in your repertoire yet. But you'll have to learn to pronounce that funny U-E-U if you're teaching francophone.
Oh no, I think it's a good choice. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, I actually first encountered that word when I was watching the movie The Goonies in French, because the character Mouth they translated his name into that word, so that is kind of how I know that word. Okay, so thanks again everyone for sharing. So for the last comic of the workshop, let me share my screen again. We are going to focus on something that is kind of inevitable when you are speaking a new language. It's the misunderstanding. So for this comic, we're going to kind of like ease on into more of like a more traditional comic format of the 3 panels. So for this, I want you to think about kind of a misunderstanding you had based on using a language maybe you weren't 100% fluent with, or just still in the process of learning. A misunderstanding that I chose for my example is when I first moved to Paris, I was a dog walker, and I had noticed that a lot of people were asking me in French, "Quelle race?" or in my head, I would translate it into what race. And I was really curious about why they kept asking me what the dog's race was as I was walking them. And I don't know, like my French was so limited that I thought they were asking me what race the dog's owners were. So I would just start saying that the dog was Japanese or the dog was Swedish. And it took me a while to understand that they were actually just asking me what kind of breed the dog was. So if you have like kind of like a similar misunderstanding like that based on languages, I think you can turn that into like a pretty simple 3-panel comic. And if 3 panels seems really limiting, I think it also helps you kind of narrow your story into 1, the exposition, and then 2, kind of like the twist or kind of like the action. And then finally, you can end it with the resolution or the conclusion or even just a punchline. But yeah, I think you can just focus on kind of like a linguistic misunderstanding you've had. And can be funny or it can just be weird or interesting. But I think that, yeah, there's a lot to mine from if you just think about it in terms of language. So again, we'll work on this for around 10 minutes and then I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys share. Okay, so about 5 or 6 more minutes. Okay, so if you have something you want to share, go ahead and raise your hand again. And well, I know that this comic might take a bit longer, so even if you just have kind of like a rough draft, I think that's worth sharing too. So I'm gonna quickly share what I did really fast. Again, it's based on my grandma. A lot of my work is based on my grandma. So it's how she used to always mix up certain words in English, even though she spoke really good English. And one of her most famous ones was she always referred to it as butter peanut. And so for the longest time, that's how I thought it was, that's what it was called too. So I would go around school saying butter peanut. And then eventually, of course, I was corrected about the quote unquote right way, but I still, in my head, refer to it as butter peanut because in my head, that just sounds correct to me. So if anyone wants to share, they can go ahead. Monique, hi.
Hi, yeah, I'm Monique. My second language is also Tagalog. I'm the first of the second generation of my family, so everyone else has worse Tagalog than I do, and it's already pretty bad. So my comic is about my cousin watching a Pacquiao versus, I forget who he was fighting at the time, but it was Manny Pacquiao and some other boxer, and he couldn't say the name of, the last name was too complicated, so he calls him Manny Pacquiao. And the first time he does this, I'm just like, what? Manny Pacquiao? Pacquiao is watermelon. So we're just, letting him think his name is Manny Watermelon. And so I imagined, a watermelon winning the boxing match.
Yeah, it's funny how those things just end up sticking in your mind forever.
Yeah, I certainly don't think of any other word now when I hear his name.
No, that's really funny. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, and Shreya?
Hi, I didn't think it would come to me so quickly. So I have a trilingual comic. So I speak two Indian languages. My mother tongue is Tamil, and then I started speaking Hindi when I moved for college. So the biggest confusion I would usually get is in the word chumma, so in Tamil, chumma means what? Just like that. So like it's common for me to say a sentence like it was just happening, chumma chumma. Except in Hindi, chumma means kiss. So that would always become a problem anytime I was having a conversation with someone who spoke in Hindi, because they would always wonder why I was suddenly talking about kissing in the middle of a conversation that had nothing to do with it.
Can you read the text on it?
So the first one says, I might have to look at this way. When I started using Tamil words with Hindi speakers, and I'm saying like it was just happening, chumma chumma, they always tripped up on chuma. I discovered soon why. So this is the Tamil word chuma in the Tamil script, and it says just like that. And this is the Hindi word, and it says kiss.
That's really funny. Yeah, I love the illustrations too. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Okay, Holly, you're still muted. It looks like.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I grew up in Ireland, but we speak English there, but I learned Irish as a child. But upon moving to the United States, I started learning Portuguese about 2 years ago. And the phrase that always got me was sua batata tá assando, which literally means your potato is cooking or your potato is baking, but it really means like, oh, you're running out of time and you're in trouble. And so I first heard it over the phone, checked the oven to see if I actually had potatoes in the oven. And then I remembered that it means like my time is running out, or they explained it to me. I don't remember what happened, but yeah.
No, the phrase is much more poetic, I feel like. That's funny. Thank you for sharing. Okay. And anyone else? Michael, again. Hi.
Hello. So this is a true story. When I was a little kid, our neighbor was Mr. Montgomery. And so one day he asked me, where did your grandpa take you in his car? And so at that time I was speaking only Cantonese. And so I answered him saying, Pu'aw, which means workplace or business. In other words, grandpa took me to work. And so Mr. Montgomery, who didn't speak Cantonese, said, the pool hall?
That's funny. Thanks again for sharing. So I think that's going to be the last comic for now. Thanks again for everyone for participating. And like I said, I really want to see your finished work, or if you end up coloring it or adding anything onto it. So be sure to tag me. My Instagram is Kate Gavino, and tag the Believer too. And we can both share it. So thanks again for sharing all the different languages that you guys speak. And I hope that this encourages you to make more comics based on these languages. So thanks again, and bonne nuit, because it's night over here in France. So thanks again, and have a good rest of your day.